Hello, sixth graders. This is a video for what we are doing in class on Monday, September 28th and Tuesday, September 29th. So as you can see, I'm in Google Classroom. I've moved our resources section up a little bit so you'll be able to see that. We'll go into that slideshow when we get into what we're doing today, but I do want to show you the homework. Your homework is real short. In class, we're going to be going over different types of patterns and different types of maps. And then your homework will be to glue in the half sheet of vocabulary into your notebook, your social studies notebook. Put it into the first clean page in the front section. So that's all you have to do. You don't have to turn in anything saying that you've done it. I just trust that you will get it done. So going into our geography slideshow, when I click on this at the top, it'll bring up our slideshow. I can go into our geography slideshow and scroll through. We're going to start on slide 26 and work through slide 36 as a class. So again, we're talking about different types of maps and different types of spatial patterns. When we look at the patterns, we look at all the dots that are on the map. Sometimes we look at the colors that are on the map. So there's 3 different types of spatial patterns, just like your vocabulary sheet says. It's that half sheet that's in your packet. There's line, point, and area. Area is probably the most common one that we'll look at. There's different types of maps: the climate, physical, political, road map, topography, and the economic or resource maps. So we'll take a look at all of those today. So looking at patterns, patterns are actual arrangements of objects on a map, and they really point specifically at things that the data that's been collected and put on the map. So here's a list of different types and visuals of different types of patterns that we may see. Some patterns are random, some patterns have regular or uniformed looks to them, and some are clumped together, and those are kind of the ones that we're really going to look at, the clumped areas. So if we look at this map, what patterns occur? So we look at regional or area patterns on this map. And what do we notice about the patterns on this map? We notice that over on the East Coast, over in this area, we can see that we have clumped patterns. And then we might ask ourselves the question of why. When we look at the title of this map, it says U.S. cities larger than 15,000 people. And when we look at where the clumped regions are, we might say, oh, well, they're probably in the larger areas. So we think about what areas we know, what cities we learned maybe from last year. When we look at California, we might think of Los Angeles. We might think of San Francisco. When we think of places closer to home, Minnesota, here we have, this would be Minneapolis, St. Paul. We have Madison, Milwaukee right here in Wisconsin. When we think of Michigan, it's Detroit. Over here, we have, larger cities like New York City. We have, just so many larger cities on the East Coast. So that's why we see those patterns, and that would be more of the area patterns that we're looking at. When we look at this map, it's called 2016 U.S. presidential election, how counties voted and how they share that vote and what those results were for this last presidential election. Yes, we have another one coming up in about a month and a half, or month or so. So when we look at this map, we look at the colors. So we can say what's missing from this map. Well, we added a title. There's no scale to tell us what each is, but we can see that Democrat versus Republican, looking at the blue and the red. We can look at the different patterns that we see. We don't see a compass, but we are looking at the United States, and we probably understand the United States and what direction is which. But those are things that we really don't necessarily need to have on this map to understand the data. Okay. So in class, we talked a little bit about what that data means, what the blue and the red mean, so looking at that. This next map is kind of interesting, and this map is taking us actually to the La Crosse County, looking at case data in regards to coronavirus. So as we clicked on that link in the slideshow, or that map on the slideshow, it was linked to this, and this just kind of gives us the information as to what we're looking at. And, it updates regularly. So as you're looking at it, it might look a little bit different. We can see the red, and we can assume that the red means high or severe. And then the orange is less severe. It's one step down from that red. So all this data we're looking at would be more of that regional data. And the area data that we're looking at. There's line data as well. So there's a lot of charts and graphs in this. One thing that's kind of nice is when we click on these areas, it will tell us what area we're looking at. So we have Unalaska here. Here's West Salem. This area in orange is Bangor. We have La Crosse area, so that's kind of nice. That's kind of why I linked it. So as we can see, looking at this data, where we're at our new cases, and we can, read the information, read the data, and say that we have certain areas in our county, this La Crosse County, that are in, red. So this is where it's, some of the areas are higher populated, but this is where that coronavirus has been pretty prevalent or pretty strong. So now we're looking at different types of map. This map is called a climate map. And as it says at the bottom in the definition, climate maps give us a general information about the climate and precipitation, such as rain and snow of a region. These maps use shade or different colors to show the varying climates. So we've looked at this map before when we looked at the average rainfall. We looked at the title of the map. It's in inches, and we looked at the scale of the map. So we picked that out when we were in class last week. So again, we kind of looked at this. Why is there so much purple up in that northern area? Why is there so much purple in the east? And we looked at the fact that more higher elevation. We looked at the fact that in the Midwest area, this right here is really dark purple when you look at it on the slideshow. And one thing that we said in class was, well, there's the Great Lakes here. And then over here we have the mountain ranges of the Rockies and the Appalachians over on the East Coast. So those are all factors that are taken into account as to how much rainfall or snowfall we would get in the United States. Looking at the next map, this is a physical map. So physical maps show us the physical features of an area. These maps focus on geographical features like mountains, rivers, and lakes. Water is usually shown in blue. Green typically shows lower elevation, and orange or brown colors show higher elevation. So we've looked at these maps before too. So when we look at this map, what patterns do we see on this map? And we can analyze those informational patterns. So when we look at this map, we see the brown being the higher elevations. We know that we have the Rocky Mountains over here, okay? And then over here we have those Appalachian Mountains. We have the lowlands, the prairies, the flatter lands. Yes, we have bluffs in our areas, but we're not having those mountains like out on the west coast and a little bit on the east coast. We see where the bodies of water are. So if we think back to the map before it, same areas where the purple, we have those mountain regions, we have that water would have been blue on that last map, and then the mountain regions over here. So just helps us understand when we know a little bit more about the physical features, what might happen on those climate maps as well. So let's keep going. And this one's a topography map. I actually used this one for the first time this summer when I was doing a lot of my hiking. So a topography map they're similar to physical maps in that they show the geographic features of an area. However, they focus on a much smaller area. So it's really zoomed in. So, and they show a smaller area due to the amount of detail that is included. This map, or these maps, are made up of small lines that show the Earth's elevation. So how high an area is elevated from sea level or how low. Lines that are close together indicate the steeper terrain. So it's kind of interesting that way. And then the obviously lines that are further apart show the flatter terrain. So it might be a plateau or it might be a lower lying area. So when we look at this map, we can see over in this area, this must be the top of a hill or a mountain of some sort. And you can see the paths that people have taken, not really the path, but just the steep areas that people maybe have climbed. We look at this area here close together. So it's, the steeper elevation. And then you could see in this area might be a flatter elevation. Here's a flatter elevation where the lines are further apart. So that's kind of how you read a topography map. When we look at this type of map, this is a map that we're probably most familiar with, a political map. Political maps do not show physical features. Instead, political maps show states and national boundaries. They show capitals and major cities. Typically, a capital city is marked with a star within a circle. These maps will likely not have a key, since it is simply showing you locations of states, countries, and the cities. We looked at this when we were looking at those regional areas and the boundaries, the specific boundaries, and we said we really didn't need to have a key. In this case, this map does have a very, very small slight key up here. National capital is shown there. We have the title of the map. We have our compass rose of the map, and this one actually shows us our scale as well. So it's 0 to 250 to 500 miles. So we could pretty much do everything we want using this map. And the title would, obviously be the United States, looking at the different boundaries of the United States. So when we look at this, there's not a lot of data that we can collect in regards to like the spatial patterns, but we can see the locations of these areas and their boundaries and compare them to other maybe size of different states. We could look at direction. If I was to ask you what direction Wisconsin is, if you were standing in Wisconsin, what direction would you travel to get to our national capital, which is Washington, D.C.? So going from Wisconsin here to Washington, D.C., you would travel southeast. If we were in Nebraska and we were traveling to Texas, we would travel directly south. If we were in California and we were traveling to Michigan, we would travel northeast. Okay, so using that compass rose definitely helps us as well. Let's go on to the next map. That's a political map. The next map is an economic and resource map. This one's kind of a fun one to look at. Sometimes you'll see these different, and you'll see a map key. This one doesn't really have a map key because there's so many pictures on the map, but sometimes you'll see the economic and resource maps have a map key, and it has a list of all the different resources and what they are, and then they're placed on the map as well. This one doesn't have that key, but it does. We can see the compass rose, and we can tell, there's no title, but we can tell that this is the United States, so it would be the economic or resources that are within the United States. So when we look at the definition, economic or resource maps show the types of economic activity or natural resources that exist in a given area. In this case, the states within the United States. These maps use symbols to show the location of resources or economic activities. For example, cheese in Wisconsin tells you that cheese is a major economic activity there. Be careful though, these maps could use a key to show the location of specific resources too. So it's kind of interesting if, we want to look at where buffalo are located. We can look at the different states that the buffalo are located. They're pretty easy to find. So we see them in Oklahoma, Texas. We see them in Nebraska, even Nevada over here. So if we want to look at other resources, that's what we can find to look at what some of these states might have that are in common with each other or very different. And you might have looked at something like this last year when you were doing your restaurant city, which I hear you guys did a pretty nice job, but it was kind of cut short a little bit due to our having to leave due to COVID, but I heard your restaurants were pretty amazing. So nice job. This map is a road map. And road maps display major highways, roads, airports, railroads, railroad tracks, cities, and other points of interest in the area. Depending upon the road map, it may show more minor features as well. For example, a road map of a country will show features that will not appear on a national road map. So this one's pretty broad because, as you can see in the title, the U.S. road maps. This is obviously the roads of the USA. And here I have my map key. I have looking at the national capital. I look at different major cities, and then I see the different types of roads as well. Okay, so these are the major highways. And if we look at where these major highways are, if we're analyzing this map, we look at these major highways being converting to these major cities. So we have large cities, as we said before. In Wisconsin, we have them going to St. Paul, Detroit in Michigan, and we have a lot in the East Coast. And we know that the East Coast is really highly populated. There's a lot of people because there's large cities, there's many cities, and there's, in the larger cities, there's more surplus. So we have all these roads that are traveling to the larger cities. So that's why we see so many more roads over here, because we have so many more cities. Whereas on the West, we don't have as many cities. Those cities are spread out so much more.